You know, there are some names in history that become more than just a name. They become an adjective. And when that adjective means pure, calculating evil, well, one name stands above all the rest: Machiavelli. For 500 years, his name has been shorthand for tyranny, for manipulation, for the dark arts of power. So today, we're going to peel back that caricature and try to find the real man behind the myth.
Let's start with the word we all think we know, Machiavellian, right? It's the schemer in the shadows, that ruthless leader, the kind of person who believes the ends always justify the means. But this reputation? Oh, it's not new. It's been around for centuries.
In fact, almost as soon as his work got out, his name became a character type, a stock villain. Shakespeare himself used the Machiavel as his go-to bad guy, the amoral opportunist who'd do anything for power. And that idea, from the stages of Elizabethan London all the way to the politicians in shows like House of Cards, has had some serious staying power.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? Because to truly understand Niccolò Machiavelli, we can't start with the myth. No, we have to start with his world. A world of fire, blood, and just constant, unending chaos. See, to really get a handle on his ideas, you have to understand they weren't born in some quiet, peaceful library. They were forged in the absolute crucible of 15th and 16th century Florence, which was, believe me, one of the most politically unstable places on earth at the time.
And this is absolutely crucial. Machiavelli wasn't some academic just thinking about power from a distance. He was in the trenches. For 14 years, he was a top diplomat, negotiating with kings, organizing armies, and desperately trying to hold a fragile republic together while the great powers of Europe were using Italy as their personal chessboard. And this timeline just shows you the insane level of chaos he was navigating. I mean, this wasn't a world of polite debate. In 1494, a French invasion completely upends the government. His career only starts after the city's fanatical religious leader is publicly burned at the stake. He then personally witnesses the legendary ruthlessness of Cesare Borgia up close. And then it all comes crashing down in 1512. The republic he served falls, and he gets arrested, tortured, and banished. This was his normal.
And living through all of this, he came to a pretty devastating conclusion. He watched leader after leader who tried to follow traditional Christian virtues. Mercy, forgiveness, trust. And he saw them preside over absolute disasters that cost thousands of lives. In fact, his own boss, a guy named Piero Soderini, was a good, honest, decent man. But his refusal to be decisive, his moral inflexibility, led directly to the Republic's collapse, and to Machiavelli's own ruin.
So what do? You're broken, you're exiled from the city you love, you're unemployed. Well, Machiavelli did the only thing he could. He started writing. He poured everything he had seen, everything he had learned over 14 brutal years in government, onto the page. And in doing so, he basically invented modern political science.
Now, this was a huge, huge shift in thinking. For centuries, philosophy had been all about the stuff on the left, the imagined truth. What an ideal state looks like, how a perfect prince should act. Machiavelli comes along and says, forget all that, let's get real. He was only interested in the effectual truth on the right, what leaders actually do to win and hold on to power, whether we find it pleasant or not.
To explain this new science, he had to redefine a key term, virtù. Now, this is not your Sunday school virtue. It has nothing to do with being morally good. For Machiavelli, a leader with virtue is adaptable. They're effective. They can be generous when it serves their goals, but they can be absolutely ruthless when it's necessary. It's all about political skill, not moral purity.
And he paired virtue with its great rival, fortuna, or what we would just call fortune, or luck. He saw fortune as this chaotic, unpredictable force, like a raging river. You can't stop it. But, he said, a leader with real virtue can use the calm moments to prepare, to build dikes and dams, so that when the flood of bad luck inevitably comes, they can channel the chaos and minimize the damage.
And underpinning all of this was a just mind-blowing understanding of human psychology. This guy was observing what we now call cognitive biases centuries before the term even existed. He noticed that people consistently go for short-term rewards over long-term benefits, that we blame others for their failures, but our own failures? Oh, that was just bad luck. He knew that if you want to lead people, you have to understand them as they are, not as you wish they would be.
Okay, so this brings us to his most famous, and let's be honest, infamous work, The Prince. And it really gets to the central puzzle of his legacy. If this is what he believed,
Then what was he trying to do? What was his ultimate goal?
This is where it gets so fascinating, because on one hand, you've got The Prince. It's this short, brutal how-to guide for a new ruler. But then you have his other major work, The Discourses on Livy, which is this massive, passionate defense of republics, which he argued were way better than any monarchy. So, which one was the real Machiavelli? The guy who wrote the handbook for dictators, or the guy who championed government by the people?
And that's the great debate that's raged for 500 years. Was the prince just a cynical job application? Was he trying to get back in the good graces of the very rulers who had tortured him? Or was he doing something much, much cleverer? Was he writing a warning, exposing the tyrant's playbook, so that regular citizens could see how it worked and, resist it?
Maybe the best way to see him isn't as a teacher of evil, but as the first true political scientist. Think about it. A doctor doesn't approve of a disease when they study a virus under a microscope. They study it to understand how it works, how to fight it. Maybe Machiavelli was doing the same thing with political power, dissecting it with brutal, unsentimental honesty, not to praise it, but simply to understand it.
In a letter to a friend, he wrote this: "I hope that people would learn the way to hell in order to flee from it." And this feels like a powerful, maybe final clue to what he was really up to. So was he showing would-be tyrants the road to power, or was he showing the rest of us a map to a place that we should do everything in our power to avoid? That's the question he leaves us with, and it's why, 500 years later, we are still wrestling with the ghost of Machiavelli.